The moment Victoria Ashford walked into the courtroom, everyone knew this case would be different. If you're ready to see privilege meet its match, hit that like button right now. The air inside courtroom 7B felt heavy that Tuesday morning, thick with the kind of tension that makes people hold their breath without realizing it. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany benches, illuminating particles of dust that hung suspended like tiny witnesses to what was about to unfold. Judge Elias Monroe sat elevated at his bench, his weathered hands folded before him, his steel-gray eyes scanning the room with the calm precision of a man who had seen every variation of human nature parade through these doors. He wore his authority quietly, like a second skin, earned through decades of service to the law rather than demanded through volume or theatrics. The defendant entered last, as entitled people often do, making sure every eye in the room turned to acknowledge her arrival. Victoria Ashford was 42 years old, but looked 10 years younger, a fact she attributed to expensive dermatologists and a life free from real consequence. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, each strand positioned with the kind of precision that requires both money and time. She wore a cream Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people in that courtroom earned in 3 months, paired with Louboutin heels that clicked against the tile floor with a sharp, deliberate rhythm. Diamond earrings caught the light with every movement of her head, and a tennis bracelet on her wrist held enough stones to fund a small education. But it wasn't her appearance that made people uncomfortable. It was the expression on her face, the slight upward curl of her lips that suggested she found the entire proceeding beneath her, amusing in the way stepping on an insect might be momentarily interesting. Her lawyer, Marcus Brennan, walked beside her carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost as much as his car. He was one of those attorneys who made a career defending people who believed money could erase accountability, and his track record was unfortunately successful enough to encourage that belief. Victoria took her seat at the defense table with the casual ease of someone selecting a chair at a country club. She crossed her legs, adjusted her bracelet, and looked around the courtroom as though evaluating whether it met her standards. Her husband, Richard Ashford, wasn't present. The billionaire real estate developer had better things to do, apparently, than watch his wife answer for destroying a young woman's life. The plaintiff sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, and the contrast couldn't have been more striking. Emma Torres was 24 years old, a graduate student in social work who had been working part-time at an upscale boutique hotel to pay for her education. She wore a simple navy dress, her dark hair pulled back in a modest ponytail, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, from nights spent staring at ceilings, wondering if justice existed for people like her. Her lawyer, Patricia Chen, was a public interest attorney who took cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. Cases where the odds were stacked so heavily against her clients that winning seemed like fantasy. Judge Monroe's gaze moved between the two women, reading the story written in their postures, their clothing, their expressions. He had seen this pattern before, this particular configuration of power and powerlessness meeting in his courtroom. He cleared his throat, a sound that somehow commanded instant silence despite its softness. "This court is now in session," he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "We are here today regarding civil case number 2024 CV 8847, Emma Torres versus Victoria Ashford. Ms. Torres alleges assault, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Ms. Chen, you may present your opening statement." Patricia Chen stood, smoothing her off-the-rack blazer, and walked to the center of the courtroom. She spoke clearly, without dramatic flourishes, letting the facts do the work. "Your Honor, on the evening of March 15th, 2024, my client Emma Torres was working the front desk at the Grandview Hotel when Mrs. Victoria Ashford checked in for a charity gala being held in the hotel's ballroom. What followed was not merely a complaint about service, not merely a difficult customer interaction. What followed was a targeted, vicious, and ultimately physical attack on a young woman whose only crime was following hotel policy. Victoria let out a small, derisive laugh. Not loud enough to be called out immediately, but audible enough to make her contempt clear. Judge Monroe's eyes shifted to her for precisely 2 seconds, and somehow that brief glance contained more warning than most judges could convey with a full speech. She stopped laughing. Patricia continued. Mrs. Ashford demanded a presidential suite that had already been occupied. When my client explained this and offered alternative accommodations, Mrs. Ashford became verbally abusive, calling Ms. Torres incompetent, stupid, and several racial slurs that I won't repeat unless necessary for the record. When Ms. Torres maintained her professional composure and continued following protocol, Mrs. Ashford reached across the desk and threw a hot cup of coffee directly into my client's face. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Emma's hand instinctively moved to her cheek, where faint scarring was still visible if you looked closely enough. The coffee caused second-degree burns across Ms. Torres's face and neck, requiring emergency medical treatment and leaving permanent scarring. But Mrs. Ashford wasn't finished. As hotel security approached, she screamed that Ms. Torres had attacked her, that this was assault, that she would have my client arrested and ensure she never worked again. She used her wealth, her connections, and her husband's name as weapons, telling everyone present that the Torres family would be destroyed. She then physically shoved my client, causing her to fall and strike her head against the desk corner, resulting in a concussion. Patricia turned to face Victoria directly. And when police arrived, Mrs. Ashford smiled at them, handed them her business card with her husband's name embossed in gold, and said, and I quote, I think you'll find this was all a misunderstanding. These people sometimes get confused about who they're dealing with. The courtroom was absolutely silent. You could hear the ancient heating system clicking, could hear someone in the back row swallowing nervously, could hear the scratch of the court reporter's fingers on her stenotype machine. Marcus Brennan stood smoothly, his expensive suit rustling with the movement. Your Honor, the defense absolutely acknowledges that an unfortunate incident occurred that evening. However, my client maintains that she was provoked, that Ms. Torres was deliberately antagonistic and unprofessional, and that what happened was an emotional response to being treated with shocking disrespect. Mrs. Ashford has offered a generous settlement to resolve this matter quietly, but Ms. Torres has refused all reasonable attempts at resolution. Reasonable? Patricia's voice sharpened. Your client offered $5,000 and a confidentiality agreement that would have prevented my client from ever speaking about what happened. That's not resolution. That's buying silence. Judge Monroe raised one hand slightly, and both attorneys immediately fell quiet. Ms. Chen, call your first witness. Emma Torres took the stand, her hands shaking as she was sworn in. Patricia guided her through the events of that night, and Emma's voice cracked multiple times as she recounted the humiliation, the pain, the coffee burning her skin, the words Victoria had used. The fear she felt as this woman who radiated power and money made it clear that Emma's life meant nothing. She kept saying, "Do you know who I am?" Emma whispered. She kept saying, "My husband could buy this entire hotel. He could buy you." And when the coffee hit my face, I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe, and all I could hear was her laughing and saying, "That's what you get." Marcus Brennan's cross-examination was surgical and cruel. He suggested Emma was exaggerating, that she had probably been rude first, that she was clearly trying to profit from a wealthy woman's momentary lapse in judgment. He pointed out that Emma had missed work after the incident, suggesting she was milking the situation. He noted that Emma had hired a civil rights attorney, implying this was all calculated for a payday. Emma cried on the stand. Judge Monroe watched Victoria's face during those tears, saw the complete absence of empathy, saw something that looked almost like satisfaction. The prosecution called witnesses next. A hotel security guard who had seen everything and corroborated Emma's account exactly. A doctor who testified about the burns and the ongoing skin treatments Emma would need for years. A fellow employee who testified that Emma had been professional throughout the entire interaction until coffee was literally thrown in her face. And finally, they played the security camera footage. The courtroom watched in horrified silence as the video showed exactly what Emma had described. Victoria, imperious and aggressive, leaning across the desk. Emma, polite and professional, maintaining her composure even as Victoria's voice grew louder. The moment Victoria grabbed the cup of coffee and hurled it, Emma's scream, her hands flying to her face, Victoria's mouth moving, words the silent video couldn't capture but everyone could imagine. The shove, Emma falling, Victoria standing over her with an expression of pure contempt before security intervened. When the lights came back up, Judge Monroe's face was carved from stone. Marcus Brennan stood for the defense, calling Victoria to the stand. She walked up with the same confidence she'd entered with, her heels clicking, her head held high. She was sworn in, settled into the witness chair as though it were a throne, and smiled at her lawyer. "Mrs. Ashford," Brennan began, "can you describe your state of mind that evening?" "I was stressed," Victoria said, her voice smooth and practiced. "I had just driven 3 hours through terrible traffic to attend a charity gala for children's cancer research, a cause very close to my heart. I was exhausted. I had a migraine coming on. And when I arrived at the hotel, I was treated with shocking rudeness by that woman." She gestured dismissively toward Emma without even looking at her. "Can you elaborate?" "She was condescending from the moment I approached the desk. When I explained who I was, when I mentioned my husband's name, she gave me this look like she didn't believe me, like I was lying about my own identity. She was deliberately making things difficult, I could tell. She kept saying the suite was occupied, but I know for a fact that my assistant had called ahead. This girl was either incompetent or deliberately trying to embarrass me." Judge Monroe leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Ashford, you referred to Ms. Torres as that woman and this girl. Could you use her actual name?" Victoria's smile tightened. "Of course, Your Honor. Ms. Torres." She said the name like it left a bad taste in her mouth. "Continue," Brennan said. "I admit I became frustrated. I may have raised my voice. But she kept arguing with me, kept telling me no, and at a certain point I just reacted. It was a momentary lapse, and I regret it. But I was under enormous pressure, and this woman, excuse me, Ms. Torres, was being deliberately obstructive." Patricia Chen stood for cross-examination, and her expression was diamond hard. "Mrs. Ashford, you said you regret what happened. Have you apologized to Ms. Torres?" Victoria blinked. "I offered to settle this matter privately." "That's not what I asked." "Have you apologized?" "I offered her money." "Have you said the words, 'I am sorry' to her?" Silence. "Mrs. Ashford, why should I apologize?" Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "She's the one who provoked this entire situation. She's the one who couldn't do her job properly. Do you know how many people would kill for the opportunity to work at a hotel like that? And she treated me, a paying guest, a supporter of the hotel, with complete disrespect." Patricia walked closer. "Let's talk about what you said to Miss Torres that night. Did you call her incompetent?" "She was being incompetent." "Did you use racial slurs?" "I may have made comments about her attitude, which has nothing to do with race and everything to do with her behavior." "Did you tell her your husband could buy her?" "That's just a figure of speech." "Is it? Because to Ms. Torres, sitting there with coffee burns on her face, your words sounded like a threat. They sounded like you believed your money made you immune to consequences." Victoria's eyes flashed. "My husband and I have contributed millions to this city. We employ thousands of people. We support charities, hospitals, schools. What has she ever done besides serve coffee and play victim?" The courtroom erupted. Judge Monroe's gavel came down once, a sound like thunder. "Order." Patricia didn't back down. "Mrs. Ashford, after you assaulted Ms." Torres, you told police this was all a misunderstanding, but the security footage shows you deliberately throwing coffee in her face, then shoving her. What exactly was misunderstood? I felt threatened by a young woman behind a desk doing her job, by her attitude, by her tone. So your response to feeling disrespected was to burn her skin, potentially scar her for life, and then use your wealth and status to try to make the whole thing disappear. Victoria stood suddenly, her chair scraping backward. You don't understand what it's like to be in my position. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone is either trying to take advantage of you or looking for reasons to tear you down. I have to protect myself. I have to make people understand that there are boundaries, that you can't just treat people like me with disrespect and expect no consequences. People like you, Patricia repeated softly. What does that mean exactly? People who have earned their place, people who have built something, people who matter. The silence that followed those words was suffocating. Emma was crying again, quietly, her face buried in her hands. Several members of the gallery shook their heads in disgust. Judge Monroe spoke, and his voice cut through the room like a blade. Mrs. Ashford, you will sit down. Victoria turned to face him, and for the first time, something like uncertainty crossed her features, but it was quickly replaced by that familiar arrogance. She sat, but her posture remained defiant. Your Honor, she said, her voice taking on a different quality, something almost pleading but with an edge of threat underneath. I think there's been a misunderstanding about who I am and what my family represents in this community. My husband, Richard Ashford, has been a major supporter of numerous civic initiatives. We know the mayor personally. We've contributed to judicial campaigns. She paused, letting that last part hang in the air. We're not the kind of people who end up on the wrong side of situations like this. We're the kind of people who make this city function. Brennan looked like he wanted to crawl under his table. Patricia Chen's eyes widened, and Judge Monroe's face became an unreadable mask. Are you suggesting, the judge said, his voice dangerously quiet, that your financial contributions or political connections should influence this court's judgment? Victoria seemed to realize she had crossed a line, but instead of retreating, she doubled down. I'm saying that we're reasonable people who can make this problem go away. We can make everyone happy. My husband and I are prepared to significantly increase our settlement offer. We're prepared to make a donation to whatever charity Ms. Torres prefers. We're prepared to be very generous if we can just resolve this sensibly and move on. Mrs. Ashford, Judge Monroe said, and there was something in his tone that made everyone lean forward. Do you believe your family owns this courtroom? Victoria's smile was razor thin. I believe our family has earned a certain degree of respect and consideration. Yes. The judge closed his eyes briefly, as though praying for patience or perhaps gathering his thoughts for what was about to happen. When he opened them, they were burning with something cold and absolute. Mrs. Ashford, I have presided over this court for 37 years. In that time, I have seen almost every variation of human behavior. I have seen people at their worst and their best. I have seen genuine remorse and calculated manipulation. I have seen poverty and privilege, desperation and entitlement, but rarely have I seen someone sit in my courtroom, admit to assaulting another human being, show no genuine remorse, and then suggest that their bank account should determine the outcome of this case. Victoria opened her mouth, but Judge Monroe raised one hand. You will not speak. You have said quite enough. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear hearts beating. Let me make something absolutely clear to you, Mrs. Ashford, and to anyone else who might share your worldview. This courtroom does not belong to you. It does not belong to your husband. It does not belong to the mayor, or to anyone who has made political contributions, or to anyone who believes their wealth purchases them immunity from the law. This courtroom belongs to the people of this state, to the idea that justice should be blind to wealth and status, and to the principle that every person who walks through these doors is equal under the law. Victoria's face had gone pale. You came here today believing that your money, your connections, and your contempt for a young woman you deemed beneath you would allow you to walk away from the consequences of your actions. You came here believing that a generous settlement, as your attorney called it, would make your violence disappear. You came here believing that Ms. Torres, because she works behind a hotel desk, because she doesn't have millions of dollars or powerful friends, because she is simply trying to build a life for herself, was somehow less deserving of dignity, respect, and justice. The judge's voice grew harder. But you were wrong. You were profoundly, completely wrong. The security footage doesn't lie. The witnesses don't lie. The burns on Ms. Torres's face don't lie. And most damning of all, your own words today, your complete lack of remorse, your stunning admission that you believe your status should protect you from accountability. These things don't lie. Victoria was trembling now, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. You asked what Ms. Torres has ever done. Let me tell you what she's done. She went to school while working multiple jobs. She chose a career in social work, which means she chose to help people rather than accumulate wealth. She showed up to work that night and did her job professionally, even when confronted with your abuse. And when you assaulted her, when you burned her skin and shoved her and threatened her livelihood, she did not strike back. She did not retaliate. She followed the law. She filed a proper complaint. She came to this courtroom seeking justice rather than revenge. That, Mrs. Ashford, is what she has done, and it is more meaningful than any charity donation your husband's accountant ever processed. A tear rolled down Victoria's cheek, but it looked more like fear than remorse. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Emma Torres, on all counts. You are hereby ordered to pay Ms. Torres $350,000 in compensatory damages for her medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, and emotional distress. You are further ordered to pay an additional $500,000 in punitive damages because your conduct was so egregious, so calculated, and so completely devoid of remorse that this court believes a significant financial penalty is necessary to demonstrate that wealth does not purchase immunity. Victoria gasped. Brennan looked stunned. Furthermore, Judge Monroe continued, you are ordered to issue a public apology to Ms. Torres, to be published in this city's major newspaper, acknowledging your actions and taking full responsibility. You are also ordered to complete 200 hours of community service at a social services organization serving low-income families, where perhaps you will learn something about the lives of people you dismissed so easily. And finally, this court is issuing a permanent restraining order, preventing you from any contact with Ms. Torres or her family. Victoria was openly crying now, her expensive makeup running, her perfect hair falling out of place as she shook her head in disbelief. Your Honor, please, Brennan started, but Judge Monroe cut him off. If your client wishes to appeal, that is her right. But I am confident that any appellate court reviewing the record of this case, particularly the security footage and your client's testimony, will find this judgment appropriate, perhaps even lenient. The judge turned his attention to Emma, and his expression softened slightly. Ms. Torres, I cannot undo what happened to you. I cannot erase your scars or the trauma you experienced, but I can tell you that this court sees you, hears you, and values you. You came here seeking justice, and you have received it. I hope this provides some measure of peace. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face, but these were different tears. These were relief, vindication, the overwhelming emotion of being believed and valued by a system she had feared might dismiss her. Judge Monroe's gavel came down one final time. This court is adjourned. As Victoria Ashford was led from the courtroom by her lawyer, her heels no longer clicking with confidence, but stumbling, her perfect appearance destroyed by tears and shock, the gallery erupted in whispers. Emma was surrounded by supporters, by Patricia Chen, who hugged her tightly, by strangers who approached to tell her they were proud of her courage. Judge Elias Monroe gathered his papers slowly. his weathered hands steady, his expression calm. He had done what he was called to do, what he had spent nearly 4 decades doing. Remind people that justice, real justice, cannot be purchased or intimidated or wished away. It can only be served equally and without regard to who has money and who doesn't, who has power and who doesn't, who believes they matter and who society tells them they don't. This is what happens when privilege meets principle, when arrogance meets accountability, when someone who believes they own the world discovers they don't even own the courtroom. Victoria Ashford learned an expensive lesson that day. Wealth can buy many things, but it cannot buy dignity once you've lost it, and it cannot buy respect once you've proven you don't deserve it. If this story reminded you that justice truly should be blind to everything except the truth, then hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment saying justice for all, or tell us where in the world you're watching from. Because stories like Emma's need to be heard, and voices like Judge Monroe's need to be amplified. The law protects everyone equally, but only if we demand it does. Only if we refuse to accept that some people believe they're above accountability. Justice isn't just about courtrooms and verdicts. It's about recognizing that every person, regardless of their bank account or their last name, deserves dignity, respect, and equal treatment under the law. That's not just a legal principle, that's a moral imperative, and it's what makes us human.